Hello, my friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family. I hope you guys are doing well today.
We're always hoping you're doing really well.
So we have a big one. This is a 7.4 or 7.5, depending on who you're listening to, quake that hits southern Mexico. There is a tsunami warning that's been issued for waves between 3 and 9 feet that could actually reach all the way down to South America. So this is a big one. And this is in, relatively populated area, and we had a lot of shaking going on, obviously. We're going to take a look at some photos over here. You see people were most definitely afraid. I mean, that's a strong quake.
That's very strong, and there's, I can't imagine the panic.
But, Mexico, obviously, being on the Ring of Fire and all, this is an area that does get quakes this big, and we've seen them this big in the past. So what we're going to be looking for is for the energy to transfer again. Now this one, as we see, boy, does that stick out, does it not? When you look at the map and you wake up and you go, oh my.
That's like a big target.
Yeah, so, they're showing 26.3 kilometers, so it's relatively shallow. As far as the depth, 7.4 here. There was the Mexican Meteorological Service that was saying was upgraded from 7.1 to 7.5. And so when we look at where this is taking place here, and energy generally will either transfer across here, going across the Caribbean plate, or it's going to go down. So everybody basically through the Caribbean should be aware of the potential for something of basically up to about the similar magnitude, the potential that could happen there, as well as people in Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, and on down along the coast of South America as well.
Well, thank goodness we have tools that can help people prepare.
Yeah, and thank goodness we have people like Dutch who has taught us what to look for,
right.
and it really does bear out. And so here we see there's 32 quakes right now in the Caribbean plate area right here, according to the USGS, out of 472. And we've had, of course, a lot of swarming as well that's been going on southwest of Ponce in Puerto Rico for, gosh, it seems like forever right now. And we have some sporadic ones that come through this area. Such a beautiful, beautiful part of the world. And we'll keep our eyes open down there, anybody that's down in that area. And I do remember in the past seeing energy transfers when we have large ones along this area here, even down, it could even be down in Venezuela. And Venezuela, of course, is another area of contention for other ways, as we know, with the intent of removing Maduro from power that we have seen from the U.S. government, and then all the oil ships that have been making their way through and other ships with supplies coming through. Yeah, and then we saw yesterday that there was surveillance planes being sent, U.S. surveillance planes to the area, and just talking about that consciousness and earth change connection, because there is a connection between our consciousness and the earth changes, and I do think that we can have a huge effect on these negatively or positively. And as I've shared with you guys before, when I was, just studying history, because I'm a person that just, as a 10, 12-year-old kid, used to just go into almanacs and just read them from cover to cover. Yeah, that much of a nerd. Yeah. But I would notice that, there'd be times of war, and there'd be horrible things happening as far as famines and earthquakes and tsunamis, things like that. And it got me thinking about the connection between our consciousness and what manifests on the planet. As you see here, this video out of the weatherchannel.com of a pool's water shaking. So this is most definitely a big one, 7.5 as some are saying. But we know the times that we're in right now, rapid changes.
And our shields are down too.
Most definitely. And the other thing we have happening right now is we have this massive Sahara dust storm that's coming towards the U.S., and Mr. MBB was saying that it could engulf the entire Gulf of Mexico. and shows up on satellite images. You could see it coming. So there again, now this is from the International Space Station, and I know all my flat earthers will say that this is, not real, and that's not really a little curvature going there, but we know NASA, never straight answer. We understand there's agendas underway, and so there's this massive dust storm that's coming. And they're calling it a Godzilla dust cloud from the Sahara. Now, it could bring the worst air pollution in 50 years after swamping the Caribbean. And think about what we have going on. We have a plague upon the land that mostly attacks people's breathing, right? Yeah. Their cardiopulmonary system. So think about the timing of all this that we're seeing. And here we have a slow motion landslide reactivating, forcing evacuations near the Peace River in British Columbia. And so this is the Old Fort Ridge area. And this broke in 2018, and it started moving again. And the landslide's been advancing at about 1.8 miles per hour. Slow, but most definitely can be extremely destructive. It's already destroyed a large area of the roadway. As the changes get going, I'm telling you guys, and I think we're going to see a huge escalation over the next 6 months in many ways. And we have 143,000 acres of rice damage. The worst drought in history hits the Mekong Delta. And this is Vietnam area. And of course, rice is so big in as far as the industry over there. And this is what we're seeing. It's, where you have water, you have too much water. And where you don't, you have the worst droughts in history developing. And our own Southwest, we still have, fires going over here. And I'm sure we're going to have fires for the whole summer. It's just the way things are. And again, we see a lot of unusual signs. Here, the Salton Sea is spewing hydrogen sulfide. And there's an odor advisory. It might smell like rotting eggs. And is it just part of the breakdown of what we're seeing here? Or is this indicative of some major volcanic activity that's going on under the surface? Because that is most definitely a possibility here. And the changes that are going on. So the Salton Sea was created in 1905 when the Colorado River broke through a silt-laden canal and roared unimpeded for 2 years into a basin near Brawley known as the Salton Sink. It eventually grew into a 360 square mile lake that straddles Riverside and Imperial counties, but the lake has shrunk over the years and recently has become an environmental hazard, prone to choking dust storms. So the other question, is this indicative of volcanic unrest? Because we have an awful lot of volcanic activity going on. We were watching, yesterday we were watching some big quakes up here in Iceland, and it's quiet right now. And obviously Iceland has a lot of volcanic activity throughout its history. If we go back, let's do 7 all mags. Continue. So you could see what was happening, and there was a 6.0 up here too, which is nothing to sneeze at. A lot of big changes going on right now, a lot going on under the surface. And if we look at total Arctic sea ice volume, total volume, expanse in depth, it is at the lowest point going back to 2004 still, and it's been consistently at that lowest point. But again, our magnetic poles are on the move. And if at some point, I do believe that we're going to have movement of the crusts. And I am one that kind of goes along with Hapgood and, that whole line of thinking that him and Velikovsky had. I do think that there is a shifting that happens. And we see hurricane season is still in its first month, but we've already seen 6 unusual things happening. It's all about the magnetosphere. And as Cindy was saying, shields are down, Captain.
They are down.
So, we have jet streams that rapidly change. And that's what we're getting is these rapid changes, rapid extremes. For the next month, the outlook for almost all of the country is way above average temperatures. So, here is part of what we're having. We're having these extremes, and it's going to give us extreme storms, which is part of what we're having as well. So you have Dolly becomes the 4th named storm before July even. So that's pretty wild. Now, we did have Danielle, and again, it goes alphabetically. And D is the 4th letter. So Danielle in 2016 formed on June 20th, and Debbie in 2012 formed on June 23rd. So that's the 3rd earliest 4th Atlantic named storm formation on record. The other thing we've seen things go from just tropical storm to Category 5 in like a blink of an eye, which didn't usually happen before, but that's part of the changes. Cristobal's remnants headed to Wisconsin. Unusual tracks, but again, it's because of the jet stream and everything changing. And we had a record earliest 3rd named storm, and we had a duo of May storms. Bertha's last second formation, and then just how many times have we seen that intensification where they don't really expect it to become a major hurricane, whatever it is, and then it just jumps up, and next thing you know, we're looking at Cat 4, Cat 5. And we have 3 named storms already impacted the U.S. So what's the rest of the summer going to bring? That's a big question, and into the fall. So the first rule of prepping, you do not talk about prepping. Now, of course, you don't want to go bragging about, I got stock for a decade. We're fine. When, there's chaos all around you, of course, you want to lie low in so many ways, but you also want to build that support system because you just don't know. And depending on what we end up facing, because we're facing a lot of things right now, and I think there's going to be some new things thrown into the mix. Obviously, this year started out all about this, and it rapidly changed to that became secondary, even though it's still well underway, and many people are wondering, is that going to become primary again? And, of course, now we have all these demonstrations around not just the United States, but the globe. And we have all these wars and rumors of wars getting started and military movements as well. And then the whole question of what's going to happen in November and how is anybody going to be happy with the results, no matter what the results are. Whether it gets postponed or whether, there's a hanging Chad situation, whether there's some sort of crazy reversal in a state or two, or whether there's a refusal to believe the outcome, whatever that outcome is. We're most definitely, we need to be prepared as best as you can. And as this says, stages of desperation, because we've already seen people doing things that no people should do and reacting in ways that are totally uncivilized, to say the very least.
Yeah, they're going to do that. And you just never know people's reaction. What is it going to be when they're super desperate?
And I've noticed, shopping-wise, I think we're getting used to seeing whole areas of aisles just empty. And it seems to be, there's certain companies, my guess is, that are not doing well. I'm sure a lot of companies obviously have gone bankrupt, and the smaller places are going to get hit harder, usually the mom and pops. And all we're going to be left with is just one big corporate choice to choose from. Everybody shops at the corporate store. That's where we're heading. And maybe it's Amazon. Maybe it's an amalgam of Amazon and Walmart, and there's nothing else. There's nothing else. And that's part of what we're watching happen. And there is a term for what we're watching happen, and I'll let you guys put that term in the comments. But as we see, this can ramp up, and people will get more desperate and do things that perhaps they would never do when they're truly starving, truly hungry, which we're not there yet. For most of us, we're not there yet. There are obviously always individual cases, and there's entire countries that are obviously that have gone through much, much worse than even the U.S. with war and everything that comes with it. So it's best for us to prepare as much as possible, and to, as we talked about before, don't put all your eggs in one basket either. And that's where, even though it says keep things quiet, working with people that you really trust, true family, true friends, in a reasonable area, so that if something happens, say if you're in an area with wildfires and your house ends up burning down, you have to evacuate really quick, and all of a sudden you have nothing. You have no supplies, no food, no resources. Then you're at the mercy of friends and family. Now, if you work together and you had plans, then maybe some of it's dispersed.
That's a really good idea, to get in your community and get to know people a little bit. I think that's a great idea.
Get to know them a lot. Because people can change, and as well, you really got to get to know some people, really know them, in order to trust them, and of course use that intuition. So my friends, as always, I want to thank you for your support on both Ko-Fi and Patreon, and please do join us if you're able with that as well. And just stay prepared out there, keep your spirits up. Ultimately, once we get off this roller coaster ride, we'll have a new system, and we'll have one based on unity and peace and love and brotherhood. Till then, though, we have quite a ride ahead.
God bless and namaste.
God bless and namaste.